Hello everyone, welcome back to another video of Cricket Club. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a regular viewer, this is a video in English and entirely in English. And today we got another man from the United States of A. And we're here to talk about America, and we're going to do this considering that it's only his opinion. And we're going to talk about a variety of recent topics. And if you like this video, leave a like, comment down below. And if you want to even give like something hateful in the comments, do it. I'm not afraid. We're just here to talk about what is going on in the United States. We're here in Israel, should know. And we are kind of, you can call it a copycat, because a lot of things that are happening in the United States will eventually happen in Israel in some sort of way. And that's it. And without further ado, we are speaking to Connor. How are you doing, Connor Byram?
Hello, good. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing great.
Awesome.
It's morning here in Israel. In your place, it's night. What is the time?
Yes. It's just about 9:20 p.m.
Nice.
Yeah.
Not so late, not so early. So
yeah, perfect time.
So we'll dive straight through the subject, okay?
Okay.
And we're going to be talking about colleges for now, the following minutes, because I've heard many times, especially from the internet. Yeah, I had also a friend that was in the United States for a long time, and he said it's kind of true that the atmosphere in colleges is being more and more of kind of, they giving you a doctrine, they give you a way of thought, and in some places it's more like that, some places it is like that, and there is like safe places to speak. I'm not sure how they call that.
Yeah.
And the way you can speak is going to be more narrow and more politically correct, kind of. So in your perspective, you said you've been in colleges, and just tell us what you did in colleges and what do you think about it?
Yeah. So I went to college in Arizona, up at a school called Northern Arizona University, which is about 2 hours north of where I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. I went to college first in 2010, studied for 4 years, received my bachelor's in a new degree program at the time called University Studies. And basically you kind of chose two focuses. So I chose to focus on business being one of them, and then the other one was music. So I was in the music school, I was in the business school. I also did a lot of coursework in environmental sustainability, as well as I actually, in the social sciences department, I took some women and gender studies courses. And then I kind of went off and worked in the business world doing sales for a while. And then in the end of 2017, decided to go back to pursue another degree in psychology. Finished up at the end of 2019 in May, actually, with a bachelor's in psychology. Yeah, so I've spent 6 years in and out of a university setting. And I think it's difficult to quantify the entire American college experience through just one college. But one thing I can definitely offer that kind of speaks to a little bit of what you're saying is that, typically on the American college, you tend to see more of a liberal attitude. You're young, you're being introduced to these new ideas, and it lends itself to sort of opening your mind up to these new ideas. That's not to say, Republicans, conservatives can't or aren't open-minded, but typically, the college setting lends itself more to liberal thought. And so going up north from Phoenix up to Flagstaff, Flagstaff is viewed as kind of a granola. I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but kind of like a hippie.
What is granola? I know
Granola
it's food, but
it's sort of a term used for like, you know, outdoorsy hippie types, you know, backpackers, rock climbers. So yeah.
you had like a few conservative professors, or you did not have conservative professors? Was it like monochromatic, you know, one mindset that is going
Sure.
forward? That's it.
Yeah. No, I didn't feel that it was, you know, even being in a small mountain kind of more liberal town, I didn't feel like my experience was sort of hive mind or monochromatic. You know, being in the business school, felt a little bit more right leaning, a little bit more conservative leaning.
Okay. And
When
you
I was
said
taking classes like economics or accounting, you know, but we didn't. Sorry.
you continue. You continue. And
Yeah. So that was kind of one perspective that I got from it. And not every business professor was right-leaning or conservative, but I definitely think that kind of a study track lends itself a little bit more to that, to at least to economic conservatism. And then the School of Music, I mean, it's hard to tell because, you know, what's interesting about, I studied choir, I studied choral music, and you have a really interesting, diverse group of people. So there's a lot of people with religious backgrounds that came from singing in church choirs from when they were super young coming into this program. So very conservative thoughts and beliefs and ideals. And then you have, you know, people who are just into show tunes and theater and that kind of stuff. And I find that kind of community lends itself to a little bit more liberal beliefs and thoughts. And so it was kind of an interesting intersect. And I think that because of that, I don't think politics or beliefs were brought up a whole lot in the music school. We were really all just kind of there to study music together.
well,
and
that's
I think,
good.
I think a lot of people really put their beliefs aside to come together and study music. So yeah.
This is what I want to hear, because you know, when you hear all about the media and get one kind of sort of way that everyone says America is going to shit. And they don't stick to each other, and they're like fighting all the time. And this is the beautiful. And I hope you made some beautiful music, because choir music is it's beautiful. It's ancient. It got the touch, and so it was like more Christian kind of songs, or what choir.
Everything really. I mean, secular, non-secular. We would sing. I mean, we sang songs in German. We even had sung songs in like Swahili. We just all different cultures and backgrounds. We had different conductors that were studying different music and bringing in different inspirations, and we tried to sing really culturally diverse music. Which I thought was really cool, you know. And and I think a point of music is that it kind of is the one thing I think that's really kind of holding people together, because you know, people can come together and unite and enjoy music for what it is and kind of leave everything aside, so
they can connect. And one last question about colleges in particular. So you said social studies or
social sciences.
Social sciences. Okay, so was that what kind of course is this? So if you can explain to us.
Yeah, so social sciences is kind of an umbrella term, right? So when you talk about social sciences, you talk about psychology, you talk about things like women and gender studies, I think even like sometimes political studies can follow under the social sciences, right? So they're kind of more what we call soft sciences. So you have your hard sciences, which is like chemistry, biology, physiology, all of that kind of stuff, right? And social sciences have a little bit more of a social, political kind of twist. Yeah, so like I said, psychology, women and gender studies, sociology, all of that kind of
And
stuff.
what did you think about these kind of in this course? One second, my English is still not 100%. So, what did you think about this course in particular?
Yeah, so I took 2 women and gender studies courses. So I took an intro course, and I'll speak to that a little bit. Yeah, it was really interesting and eye-opening to me. I had never taken a course like that before, and I kind of just had a few friends going down that track in studies, and I figured I would kind of try it out. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was kind of going through school. But yeah, I was opened up to a whole lot of ideas about the LGBTQ community, about feminism, about inequalities and systematic oppression. And yeah, it was a really fertile place for conversation and discussion about some of the issues that we face in equality. Yeah, it was very interesting and eye-opening. And then I went on to take actually a graduate level women and gender studies course, so a little bit higher up. And the first course was like 50 or 60 people. This second course was like 5 or 6 people. And yeah, I mean, our course structure was, we would read 5 or 6 articles the day before the class, and we'd come in and talk for an hour and a half, 2 hours about our thoughts and opinions on it. And yeah, it was a very interesting experience.
Okay, so it's coming right when I want to ask the questions about the next subject, which is politically correctness.
Sure.
So definitely, in my opinion, these kind of studies are a firm ground for the whole politically correctness movement. And it's a thing that we can see also in Israel. In Israel, we definitely can see it on news and social media. And this is kind of the 2 mediums that I'm sure that is going up in the United States of America. And especially in Twitter, I think that it's going stronger in the United States. Less here. Here it's more about now TikTok, which is and Instagram, still Facebook, So these kind of social medias are here dominantly, and Twitter is more strong in the United States. So politically correctness is also brings us the ban culture, which calls to ban people. And also uses specific terminology. Let's say if we have an example, hate speech, hate speech and stuff like that, which really divides and uses one sort of way of thinking. And what can you tell us about your experience of politically correctness? Did you see it? Did you not see it? Did you not get involved in that kind of noise? And in the everyday life, especially now, if you still see the politically correctness movement.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to unpack with that. Yeah, political correctness. I have a few different thoughts, and I think I'm really still formulating how I feel about it, because I think what people are trying to get at is that, as we become a more progressive society and change is abound and all of that kind of stuff, I think people generally are trying to be more sensitive to the people around them and to the paths that they're taking and opening themselves up to their experience. And I think that's where political correctness has a lot of its positivity, right? it's trying to be correct. It's trying to be sensitive to those around you. And I think that's super duper important, you know. But yeah, sometimes you can see where it can be very negative. It can be used to shun people who have unpopular opinions, unpopular voices, who say things that are offensive. And that's where I think it gets a little bit tricky, right? Because, you know, in the US, our First Amendment rights, right? Freedom of speech is part of that. And I think that's really important to me. And as much as I don't always like what people have to say, I still think it's more important that they're allowed to say that, right? Because we want to be diverse, we want to be open, and if they can't speak freely, why can anyone else speak freely, right? I don't have to listen to that person. I also don't even really have to grant them a platform, right? I can ignore them. But I think I've had a few different experiences. I kind of want to roll back to going through women and gender studies coursework. So when you enter into that kind of environment, right, there's a lot of people in women and gender studies and in the feminist movement who are extremely well-read, very, very educated, very intelligent. And I found myself entering into this environment that I didn't have an understanding of. I didn't have the language in my mouth. You know, I didn't know what some of these words they were using, you know, intersectional, hegemony, kind of all of these words that you begin to learn. And I felt very sort of alienated, not to put any pity on me in that, right? It was I had to do my due diligence to get educated in that. But I found that sometimes people within the WGS community can be a little bit extremist about that. And if you're not using the right words, and if you make a mistake, it's very unforgiving. And it's difficult to interface with people then. It's difficult to have a conversation with somebody if you're not allowed to be wrong, right? If you're not allowed to have a slip up and be granted the ability to see where you made a mistake and grow and come closer with that person, right? And that wasn't my total experience, and I wouldn't even say that's the majority of my experience being in WGS and a feminist environment. But I think that it was definitely one negative aspect of political correctness. And I think that's a good sequitur to talking about ban culture or cancel culture. So I think it's good to lay down a definition for this, or how I understand it is that, you know, cancel culture is taking someone or a company that has done or said something that's offensive and stripping away their voice, right? Silencing them as a way to give them consequences for their actions. And while I don't agree with what some of these people who have been canceled are saying, again, I always fall back to freedom of speech, right? We should be able to say what we want to say, I think with one exception, if you're actively inciting violence, right? If your words are inciting violence and harming other people actively, I think that's where it gets a little bit blurry. But let me think here for a second. So I have a couple points about cancel culture that I'm still kind of working at in my head. One is that, you know, I think when people talk about cancel culture being bad and destructive, right, they're taking the focus a little bit away from the original event, right? So somebody said something that was harmful. Maybe it was racist, you know, and people have a right to be angry about that, right? People have a right to have a reaction to what somebody has said, to be upset about it and to speak out against it. That's also somebody else's right. And sometimes when people speak out against cancel culture, I think that they're a little bit lacking the compassion for maybe the victim and the people who are receiving those negative words and having a reaction to it, right? They're putting the onus on the oppressed people to take the higher ground, to be the better person, right? Yeah, and also I think in another light, I think cancel culture is sort of counterintuitive, because we want that person to realize that what they did was wrong and hurtful, but we silence them. We don't give them a platform to have a conversation with us, to help them maybe realize why what they said was hurtful or disrespectful or racist, right? We don't allow them to come to that conclusion, or to try to come to that conclusion, right? When we cancel someone, we're saying what you said was wrong. You're always going to be wrong, and you don't deserve redemption. You don't deserve to grow or to learn from this situation, right? And that pulls the conversation apart. That polarizes people. That brings people apart, right? What we need to be doing is having compassion for one another, as difficult as it might be, right? And we need to come together, and we need to have those difficult conversations about why some of these things that people are saying are offensive, and just keep an open mind, right? That's how we come together. So yeah, I think cancel culture is kind of tricky, but yeah, ultimately I think that it's not achieving what it set out to do.
So yeah, so you said a lot here. I wanted to be more of your opinion, I can go on bragging about the politically correctness for a lot of time, and how it's beginning to be here in Israel also. But you said some beautiful stuff, definitely giving the people the way to speak. I mean, not when you're banning them and then shunning them it's not doing the right thing, and it's more polarizing the conversation. And while this is a harsh time, and there should be more conversations and more definitely some sort of communications in the sorts of community. Like I saw one video of a man. It was a southerner, so from one of the South states, and he said that during the Great Depression, people came back to their families, and this is what it's something that could happen now in the coronavirus, that people are going back to their families because they can't handle their own life, and the whole family is kind of brought in together, and it's something that might be not available for everyone in the United States, this functional family. And so they got together and they worked together and they got the whole situation through together. And although not everyone in the United States is now maybe in a very, very bad situation, definitely more people, I think, are going to be in the harsher situation. So I hope people like you, you sound like a reasonable man, continue on giving in the reasoning for other people, just to have the conversations that should be in any situation, because less communication is not the answer. And so now also you said your thoughts on the politically correctness, and definitely one of the movements that we can see now that is deeply rooted in the whole politically correctness now, it's the Black Lives Matter, and we're here to speak about everything. We're here to speak about all that is going on in the United States. So Black Lives Matter, I'm not gonna say anything. Have you participated in one of their marches or anything about this recently? Have you seen the consequences? Give me give us like a picture that's what is going on with Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, it's a big picture, I think. I personally have not attended any of the marches. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm taking this time to educate myself and to learn how I can do better in a system that has been oppressive against minorities, against Black people, and how I can stand up and be a better person to promote change in this country. But yeah, there's a lot of different topics that we can touch on with the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think, you know, there's a few obvious points, right? So in the US, you might be seeing these people saying, well, all lives matter, right? Why are we just saying Black Lives Matter when all lives matter, right? And I think those people are sort of missing the point, right? So I want to draw a couple lines here. So as you might be aware, in the US, our education is severely underfunded. Teachers are not paid very well at all. Oftentimes they have to buy their own supplies, right? And they don't have livable wages. And so there's a lot of people standing up for teachers and saying, we need to get them more funding. They need to be paid more fairly, right? And nobody stands up and says, hold on, all jobs matter, right? Right? Because, yeah, that's obvious, right? It's obvious that all lives matter and should matter. But the problem here is that we are treating some people, in this case, the Black community, as less than, and we're not sharing our privilege with them. And so we are standing up and saying, hey, we need to pay attention to this group that's suffering to systematize racism and oppression, and we need to fix this. So that, I think, I don't know if you guys have kind of seen those arguments in Israel, or I think you're muted right now. I can't hear you.
Sorry.
There we go.
So I want you to go through an actual example from everyday life, because it's kind of an argument that what you said right now. And I would really want to hear how it comes in real life, because definitely I can't, I am seeing things from the outside. I see things through media. And what is the privileges that everyone is speaking about? Because I talked last time when I talked to another girl from New York, and she's definitely saying, yes, there are privilege and we are privileged and we need to share these privileges. What are the actual privileges that people are not sharing in their opinion?
Yeah. So you basically want an example of systematized racism playing out. Yeah, sure. I can give you a few examples. So I studied psychology, and so I'm a little bit more informed in that. So I'll relate it to coronavirus, right? So what we're seeing at a national average right now is that people in the Black community are, I think, something like 3.5 times more likely to die from coronavirus than white people. And you even look in the Latinx community, and they're 2 to 2.5 times more likely to die from coronavirus. In some states, it's more. In some states, it's less. I think I saw, if I'm not mistaken, in Pittsburgh, they're dying at an 18 times higher rate than white people. So there's a few reasons for this. One being that typically what we see across the United States is that is ethnic minorities, the Black community, the Latinx community, they have less access to reasonable health care. And then another reason too is that so one point that people bring up is that people in the Black community, typically have more of these pre-existing conditions, right, that expose people to higher death rates in COVID. One of those being diabetes, right? Heart failure, heart disease. Those are two prime examples of comorbid diseases that could heighten your risk of dying from coronavirus. Now, a lot of people in the past and today have used these types of pre-existing conditions to say, well, hey, Black people must be more genetically susceptible to diabetes or to heart disease, right? And that's kind of the gut instinct. But there's a study. It's called. I'm going to go out on a tangent here, but I'll loop it back in. So
Okay.
there's a study called Adverse Childhood Experiences, ACEs for short. The name of the psychologist who did these studies kind of escapes me, but she did it in conjunction with Kaiser Permanente, which is a big medical institution in the U.S. But what they studied was how do childhood traumas affect you later in life, right? So they took adults and they had them run down a list of things. So was there divorce in your household? Was there drug use in your household? Was there criminal activity in your household? Was there sexual abuse in your household? Was there physical abuse in your household? Was somebody in your household incarcerated? Things like that, right? So they came out with all of these findings, and they found, I'm going to misname some of the statistics here, but I'll give you a general idea. So I think they took people that had 4 or more of these points, right, from this list. And they found that they were, I think, 40% more likely to have heart-related disease. They were far more likely to have something like diabetes. I think they were 30 to 40% more likely to have substance abuse problems. And I think men who had 4 or more were 18% more likely to use intravenous drugs like heroin. And the list kind of goes on and on. And so what they're finding out is that childhood trauma really, really affects health outcomes later in life. So let's bring that back into the COVID conversation, right? So if Black people are living in a system that brings trauma to them because of inequity, of inequality, of less opportunities, right? They're being exposed to more trauma, and they have less resources. They have less social resources. They have less options to get therapy, to get help, to get drug abuse help. And I'm not saying all Black people deal with drug abuse, but they have less resources for education, right? So they're constantly put in these situations where they're having more stress, more trauma. And we know through scientific studies that that has health outcomes, like, as I said, diabetes, heart-related diseases, right? And these are the exact sort of comorbid diseases that are creating higher deaths in coronavirus, right? So this systematic oppression and racism has brought these negative health outcomes to the Black community. And now they have far less resources to get the help that they need. So it's causing, again, higher rates of death in these communities.
So you said a lot, and I love the example that you got,
Yeah.
that you gave, because it's also backed by a study, and I did not expect that.
Mm-hmm.
So Black Lives Matter, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, I always hear people when they talk about this subject,
Mm-hmm.
that police's brutality is bad and should
Mm-hmm.
be handled, and that the man that died and was killed by an officer
Mm-hmm.
was brutally murdered, and the cops should have be treated and have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things that need to be going forward for the Black communities. So
Mm-hmm.
there seems to be like people agreeing in all the subject, but
Mm-hmm.
then the conversation shifts,
Mm-hmm.
and being more in all the places, being divided to kind of different opinions.
Sure.
Can you, I'm sure you've been seeing this somewhere, okay? Can you pin the thing that being divisive in this conversation about the BLM movement?
Yeah, first, I think it's worth backing up a little bit and saying, you know, I think that a wide majority of people are agreeing, right, that what was done to like George Floyd was wrong, right?
Yes. So
there's a lot of people objectively agreeing that.
Yeah.
But I've also seen a lot of opinions of people saying things like, well, if you don't want to be brutalized by the police, don't commit a crime, right? They're saying if you don't want to have that outcome, don't put yourself in a situation where you're interacting with police, which is totally wrong, right? And it misses the point. But so you're asking what I think is the most divisive part of the police conversation, or
because the conversation shifts, because as everyone's starting to speak about, I'm agree about this and this and that, but and from there it's going like no, and then to see that
totally. You know, it's difficult to pinpoint what the most divisive thing is. I have a couple ideas, right? So I think that you have people in my opinion, you have people on the right who are always going to stand behind law enforcement and authority and are always going to back them up, right? Those people just fundamentally believe that those people are in the right, and they cannot fathom or wrap their head around the idea that like somebody with that much power that is in a position that's supposed to help communities could do something wrong. And there's a lot of people that are pushing that forward and disagreeing, especially in Arizona. Arizona's super divided on this. I mean, I walk down the street daily and I see people wearing, you know, Blue Lives Matter t-shirts, or they carry this symbol of the American flag that has the blue stripe, which is in support of police. And it's a very, very red right-wing state. It's difficult to say that everyone's agreeing on one thing, because it seems like a lot of people are disagreeing in general. But one point a lot of people try to make is they think that this movement is trying to say that every cop is bad, right? That's become a very divisive point. And people will argue, well, not every cop is bad. There's good cops, right? And this has been a really, really big back and forth. And well, I would agree, right? There's cops out there who have become cops because they genuinely want the greater good for society. They want to serve their country. They want to make communities safer for people. I agree with that. But they're working in a system, right, that is broken. And I want to give one example. I always kind of go back to a teacher example, right? So if we're at a school, right, and one of the teachers is abusing one of the children, right?
Okay.
And every other teacher knows about it, but they decide to say nothing, right? They don't do anything. They know the teacher is possibly abusive, and they're not doing anything to protect that child, right? We could argue that they're great teachers. We could argue that they're great at what they're doing and they love the kids that they teach and they protect the kids that they teach. But if that teacher isn't stepping out and holding that other teacher accountable for what they're doing, then they're implicated in that crime, right? They're implicated in that broken system. That these, while there are good police officers, they owe it to the people that they serve, which is ultimately the community, to step up against other police officers that are doing for defense of trying to build a system that is not oppressive. So
okay, so definitely the good cop, bad cop, I can feel like that this is the divisive part. Okay, good or bad. So I think when you pinpoint the argument quite good.
Mm-hmm.
So next divisive subject. So we were going to talk about one of the most controversial leaders of the world, and I love seeing people talking about Trump because usually they're going like, "Oh no, Trump bad," or they're going Trump like, "No, Trump good."
Yeah.
And even here in Israel, because he's very pro-Israel and is not ashamed to be outspoken about it. It's the good things and good friendships with the United States. Personally, I think that we should be less reliable on the United States. We need to bring ourselves some power back. But we're talking about Trump and related to the United States, and more specifically, I want you to also to address his behavior during the coronavirus. So Trump, what is going on?
Yeah. It's difficult to even put into words my frustration with this subject and the way things have gone. I think with everything that's happened, that's unfolded this last year, I think in general, he's been very divisive. I think he has been a big key player in pitting people against each other and inciting violent words on the internet. One thing that comes to mind is his statement of saying, you know, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. He retweeted a post of a video of somebody saying white power. Yeah, I mean, the list goes on, as I'm sure you're aware of. And in a time where we need a leader to step up and be apolitical and bring the people together and unite this country, that's the opposite of what's going on right now. Coronavirus is, excuse my language, a shit show. Like it's just from the beginning, you know, brushing this threat off like it was nothing. We've got it airtight. We're good. It's going to be done. Right. We've got it contained. That obviously isn't the case. And just the sheer amount of misinformation that was going around is just very, very frustrating. Yeah. And there's just kind of a lot that went on, but right now it seems like we just really have a lack of leadership. We need someone to step up and make a game plan. And the state of Arizona just put in a request to have an emergency testing center built. We requested federal funding for that because there are thousands of people lining up a day to get testing done, and they wait in line for 2, 3, 4 hours to get to the front of the line, and they're told, we're out of tests. Sorry, we can't test you.
They're also risking themselves in these kind of lines.
Yeah. And it was denied by the federal government to get aid to build another testing center, when that's exactly what we need right now in the COVID epicenter of the country. You know, we need to be testing people. We need help. We need resources. Our intensive care units in Arizona right now are at, I think, about 93% capacity. And this is before we're going to see the result of what this past holiday, July 4th weekend is going to bring in terms of a case spike, you know. We need a leader that's wearing a mask, that's going to mandate mask laws, that's going to mandate strict reopening structures. And this guy just over and over again refuses to take responsibility and step up and be a leader. And he passes off his responsibilities to other people. And to me, it kind of seems like he's trying to put himself on a balancing line of, if something happens that's bad, he can sit back and be like, I gave you guys the power to make those decisions. You made the wrong decision, right? And again, it's a failure on his end to take responsibility, you know, and to live with that responsibility and to be a leader of what some of his supporters would call the greatest country in the world, right? And it just doesn't seem like that's how he's acting, or that's how he wants to act at all. So yeah, it's very frustrating.
So yeah, definitely a lack of leadership is what usually I hear about when hear talking about Trump, and also the other contendants. It's an election year, and also it's been the 4th of July, so congratulations. Uh, what is the how old is the United States right now?
Let's see. That's a good question that I should know the answer to. That
kind of 300 something years.
Yeah, I think it was 1770. Don't quote me on this. But yeah, 300 some odd years old.
So you have this 4th of July, and I'm kind of changing the subject, because really it's something that it's a subject that can show the mentality of the United States. So here we got our Independence Day also, when the British occupation in 1948, they went away, and we got our independence, and it's like a very, let's celebrate and everything. What kind of differences did you see this kind of Independence Day?
Yeah, it's now become a very, very polarizing holiday, I think, especially now. It kind of always has been, right? So when the left side or people who are more in like the Black Lives Matter movement, when we talk about July 4th, it's slavery was still going on, right? This is a celebration of independence and freedom. And yet this country was still being built on the backs of slaves, right? No, not everyone in this country was free. And so it's become sort of a divisive holiday that represents something that everyone believes in. But yeah, I mean, it's a patriotic holiday, and in Arizona, I mean, I didn't go out, I didn't do anything for this holiday. But a lot of people gathering to get together and celebrate and don their American flag apparel and do all sorts of crazy stuff, light off fireworks. And yeah, it's a very, very popular holiday, right? So
but you still saw some celebration, right?
What's that?
You still saw some celebration, so it wasn't like, no, people, we're going to stay home.
Yeah, tons of celebration. I get it. People are excited. They want to celebrate, but it's also difficult in this environment with coronavirus in a place like Arizona to be able to justify that, putting more people at risk to celebrate something like that, right? But yeah, still tons of celebration. I heard fireworks going off everywhere.
So people should still be safe, keeping themselves healthy. And we had our holidays in Israel. I think we have like in the Jewish tradition, there's so many holidays. We got, I can't even count. We got so much. So we definitely have like 3 special occasions during this coronavirus already. So it's good. People need to go and still live life to the fullest, and this consequences of, you still need to look out for your own health and the other people that you care of. So we're going kind of to the end of this conversation, and quickly now, this is two quick subjects, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
On the top of your mind, what is the number one problem that needs to be solved in the United States?
I think inequality. I think, the way that inequality and oppression affects minorities in the Black community, first and foremost, need to be addressed.
Okay. And the last subject, and then we'll do something a little bit different. Tell us about something good. Because we hear also always the bad stuff, the war stuff from the news, and tell us something good that's going on in the United States lately.
Sure. Yeah, I think in spite of everything that's going on, I think we turn to the internet, especially, I'm sure you guys are looking over at us, where you're watching through the internet and through the media, and it's easy to see that we look like two different sides going at each other, and there's riots in the street and also, but I'd like to point out that I really think that the really divisive stuff, right? People are getting in these super brutal arguments, that seems to be more often and is becoming less common, right? That's this, what am I trying to say? This narrative that's being pushed. But when I look around me, even in a state like Arizona, that's very conservative, and I'm consider myself pretty liberal, right? I look around me and I see people that are coming together. I see fellow Caucasian white people that are taking the time to educate themselves, to take initiative that they didn't before, to stand up to with people next to them, Black people, minorities, to figure out how we can help them, how we can, I'm not trying to give off this idea of this like white savior complex, but how we can be better, and even in the coronavirus situation, I see people in the medical community stepping up, going the extra mile, putting their lives on the line to save people, to help people. And when I put down my phone and look away from my computer and tune into what's going around me, more often than not, I see people coming together and trying to figure out how we can make this country a better place. And to me, that's the most patriotic thing ever, is being able to say, this is wrong and we need to fix this. We need to make this better because we want to make this country more equal for everyone and safe for everyone. And yeah, just to conclude that, I see people stepping up and helping each other out.
As I said, bringing people together, it's the best thing that could happen, and it's beautiful what you said. Last thing, I did not talk to you about this at all. Mm-hmm. So you have one message, okay, to the people. You get about 1 minute. It can be not related at all to the topics we talked about. Just something on the top of your head. You, Connor, is saying to the people, your message. Shoot, you got 1 minute. What is going on? Just tell us.
Going back on what I said, I think is the most important thing in the US, and I think globally, a lot of countries are dealing with this right now, is dealing with inequality in our systems. And I think, man, it's a tough one to approach, but I guess I want to approach something that I am working through and dealing with. And this is this idea of white guilt, right? So when we talk about white guilt, it conjures up feelings like defensiveness, fear, sadness, anger, right? And I just kind of want to break that down a little bit, right? So when I talk about defensiveness related to white guilt, that can come out in phrases like, I don't see color, I'm not racist, right? People become very defensive and they think like, this could not possibly exist, right? And I think that those are extremely problematic statements, right? And they dismiss the fact that there's systemized racism and oppression, right? And this is so much bigger than me and my feelings of guilt, right? and it can bring out sadness, right? So what happens when we're sad, right? We've done something wrong and we're sad. We seek forgiveness, right? So what I see is a lot of people profusely apologizing, right, to people who are oppressed. And I also want to point out that that's problematic, because now what we're doing is we're putting the responsibility on them to absolve us of past things that we have done wrong, right? And it's our own responsibility to forgive ourselves and to do better, to move on, right? It doesn't do anybody any benefit to be sad about what's going on around us. We need to step up and do what's right. And another thing that I see in terms of white guilt is this sort of fear and paralysis response. So I see a lot of people around me that have become so consumed with guilt and even this idea of political correctness that they end up doing nothing. They sit back and they watch because they don't want to do something wrong. And I just want to, from my understanding, the Black Lives Matter movement is not asking white people to be perfect. They're just asking us to educate ourselves and to speak up in solidarity. Right. So they're not looking at me or any other white person, and asking us to atone for our sins or atone for our ancestors' sins. But what they're asking is for us to use our privilege to help dismantle what's going on. And that's a topic that I've been working through, not to put myself on a pedestal, right? But I've been working through this idea of white guilt and trying to deal with it on my own. And I've just really come to realize that it's a waste of time and energy, right? And again, I need to process these feelings on my own. That's so that I don't step out into the world and sideline myself from being a part of this positive change, or that I don't suck the energy out of someone else who is actively trying to help make change. That was kind of a tangent, but to me, that's something that I'm trying to do work for myself. And so it seemed relevant.
So it was more than a minute, but all right. I love the thing you said, white guilt. And I love the fact that you come to the realization that it's a waste of time. Mm-hmm. Nobody should be angry about himself because other people said you should be angry about yourself because you're X, Y, Z. And on this note, we're finishing up. I really, really suggest that everyone should seek out and get to know the reality the way it is, not only on the social media and usual media, and the whole thing of the message that everyone is being divisive. And you said people are coming up together, and that's beautiful to hear that. This is exactly what I was searching to hear, that people are not, that the universe is not in the verge of collapsing in the United States. Yeah. And it's very good. And that's it. Really, thank you, Connor.
And thank you.
I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a pleasant time in the United States, and whole problems will be solved soon. If not, you will keep your head, and the independent thinking. It's really, really important these days, and not at all, how you say it? It's not common to use your own thinking, and it's really important.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, Connor. Goodbye.